of the Ad Hoc Bluffton Growth Committee to order. Today is Thursday, July 22nd, and it is 5 p.m. on the dot. First item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So everybody could please stand, and Robin, put up the digital flag for us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And can I get a motion for the approval of the agenda?
Madam Chair, I move we approve the agenda.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and second because I believe it's only the two of us today, Colonel Geyer. Any discussion on the agenda? Don't see any hands. So I'll call that vote. Signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous. Next item is public comments. I don't believe we have any public comments. Is that correct, Robin?
No public comments.
Okay, wonderful. Moving down to item D, which is the approval of the May 27th, 2021 committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the May 27th, 2021 committee meeting minutes.
I'll second. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous. Thank you, Robin. And now for our main event. We are fortunate today to have with us Beaufort County Treasurer Maria Walls. She's going to be doing a presentation and opening up questions, a question and answer period for us on Bluffton growth, kind of what she's seeing in her office. And I just wanted to thank you first and foremost for being with us today. We're really appreciative of you making the time to come to our committee and help us in our work and kind of getting a better grasp on what is going on in Bluffton right now and what you're seeing. So Robin's going to let you share your screen and I'll just let you take it away.
Awesome. Okay. Well, first, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to Rachel specifically for you inviting me, because when you asked me, I thought, I've been in the office in different roles for 10 years and I've given you guys a lot of information, but have never actually presented. So this was a really exciting topic, and I know your request was to do the same presentation, but it is totally different because I think your informational needs are very different from a community group for sure. So we're going to start off with, let's see here, sorry about that. Okay, so I want to start off with, what are you going to be able to answer at the end of this presentation? And this is a spoiler alert. I am not going to tell you anything you don't already know driving around in your car. You are seeing growth. You are seeing more traffic. You are seeing more homes. You are seeing more cars, more people. So my goal in today was first to let you know how are we doing financially, because if you don't have the revenues to do what you want to do, that'll be a challenge. And then how much are we growing? Because I don't think that that's really a question anymore. You're seeing it. It's how much are we growing and where. The school district is unique to the other agencies that the treasurer's office serves, because you have specific service locations in the form of schools throughout the county, and your needs are different. So a county building is very different than what a school needs. So you're going to be able to answer these three questions more specifically than, wow, we're really growing. So let's get started with, how are we doing financially? And I wanted to start with a baseline. We know that the bills, our collection efforts were delayed this year. So the information I'm showing you is actually with 2 months approximately less than we would have had in a normal year. So as of January 31st, by this point in the year, the bills are out. And I just wanted you to see the billed dollars difference year over year. And I typically provide this report on a monthly basis. And it's just going to break out for us. Our key indicators are the county, the school district, and then a total dollars billed. Here's what I always think is interesting. This is not abnormal. It is very common, but you'll see the shift between June 30th and January 31st. So I'm going to go back to the previous slide, and you're going to look at the school operations column. It went from $162 billed to $156 in 5 months. Now the county's number did decline as well, but nowhere near the same amount. This is very common. I'm not saying that it's good, but it is very common. And it typically results in customers receiving their tax bills and realizing, I'm not getting my legal residence exemption. I need to submit that. And then it takes a few weeks for the assessor's office to process that. And when the adjustment is made, it drops the billed dollar amounts for the school district. And we've had conversations over the years where revenues weren't what maybe was expected at a given point in time. And we can only collect what's billed. So if the billed dollars are near where your total revenue expectations are, it is going to be off. So I just thought you should see where we are, where we do have a very healthy collection rate considering the 2-month delay that we had. Our delinquent bills just went out a few weeks ago, and we typically have to send out about 20,000 delinquent bills, and we sent out around 8,000 this year. So from a quantity standpoint, our delinquencies are down. Again, we sent delinquent bills a lot later than we normally do. But unique to this year, we did also send a reminder bill. It was such an abnormal year, and we thought our customers would benefit from getting a reminder, not a delinquent bill, a reminder before the bill was actually due. So we're hoping that that prompted also a lot of payments to come in the door. So from just a general observation of what we're seeing in our offices, Bluffton is exploding. We are needing to increase the number of staff members we have in our Bluffton office. We are getting more phone calls, more emails, everything is just more. Again, consistent with what we're all seeing. And we are not experiencing that type of in-person traffic in our Beaufort office. And that's unique. Typically, Beaufort is the busiest, Bluffton was a close second, and Hilton Head was trailing in third. Bluffton is on par to surpass Beaufort easily in the next few months. Again, not surprising, but just good to know. So let's start with account volume. And we know we're growing, and the way the treasurer's office measures that is the number of accounts we are looking to pursue. And I'm focusing on real property and vehicles for 2 reasons. The increase in the number of those accounts is indicative of there being more people here. More households means more people, possibly more families with children. I'll get back to that. And more vehicles. So we had a 20,000 account number increase from this year versus last year. And yes, we've been a growing county for a long time, but we are seeing an explosion. And a little personal anecdote, earlier last year, I was speaking to a family member who lived in another part of the country. They are not lucky to live in South Carolina. And they were talking about how they were on lockdown because of COVID, and they were not allowed to go to the parks. Well, in this particular, the state parks, and in this particular area of the country, there are a lot of walking trails that the trail themselves is a state park. And you were not allowed to park and walk by yourself on these trails. The minute someone can't walk alone, they're probably going to be looking at a great place like Beaufort County to live. You want to be somewhere where you can do what you want to do, whatever that is, right? We have beautiful weather, we have a great community, and I thought, oh man, I'd so much rather be here than there. And that is exactly what we're seeing. So we want to get I do want to get one housekeeping thing out of the way. I will be addressing 3 types of years. The reason for that is that our billing cycles are different for different property types. And you guys might all know that, but those our customers or taxpayers viewing might not realize the difference. So I'm going to plug in an example. A fiscal year is the year we use to keep track of our revenue. Our general ledger, our accounting work, expenses is focused on a fiscal year, which is going to run from June to July. A tax year is the year that you're going to send our bills out, which is around October 31st, and it'll run for a 12-month period. So that's a tax year. And then, of course, we all know a calendar year. So I just wanted to acknowledge that in the data I'm going to be referencing, I have to display it differently in some of the pieces because the billing cycles are different. So I don't want anybody to get confused between those 3. So at this point, I am going to want everybody to grab their map because we're going to dive in what's going on in Beaufort County and Bluffton specifically. So first, a tag, because you see that acronym right here on the screen. A tag is a tax authority group. It is a geographical area on the map of Beaufort County that is assigned to our millage rates that are in that area. So a property that is in tag 100, so that's going to be right here, is going to get all of the millage rates applied to it, county, school district, etc., applied to it that are in this geographical jurisdiction. And that is how I am able to extract today's data that I'm going to show you and isolate Bluffton. So I just wanted to identify that this is the purpose of this map because you're going to see that we're actually growing everywhere. And we're going to go over 2 types of data. First, volume, because quantity, like I said, quantity in the number of accounts is indicative of number of people. I can't speak on population, but I can talk about tax bills. So it is an indication of population shifts. And then we're going to talk about values because that is where your group is going to derive their tax revenues, and value drives the bus on taxes. We spend a lot of time discussing tax rates and millage rates, but you first have to start with the value, and that's going to drive the bus on that tax bill. And how we're going to navigate these 2 data, so just to give you a little preview where we're going. We are going to start at a countywide level so you can see a big picture, and then we'll drill down into that Bluffton tag level. All right, so let's start first. Where's my cursor here? Let's start first with real property accounts. So I already said that we're growing, right? And to me, to have more real property, that is more parcels, more dirt. And from the context of the school district, those are going to be your top most valuable taxpayers in the context of the entire tax base. So if you had to choose between more real property and more vehicles, you want more real property. They're going to be a higher value if they are not receiving the legal residence exemption. So this is just to give you an idea of the trajectory we're on. So between tax year 2020, which we are still only halfway through, we have a approximately 1,200 jump between 2019 and 2020. That is sizable compared to last year was only 600. So it's double, and we're not finished the year yet. So now we're going to look at that same information, but now this is breaking it out by areas of the county. And it again validates your expectation of this committee, I believe, that Bluffton is growing. And you'll see that in the other tags, the other areas of the county, again, keep your map out, that tag 100, Hilton Head, north of the Broad, Sheldon, Ladies Island, different areas. I mean, we might have a little bit of growth here, but where is that boom? that boom is happening in Bluffton significantly, where in comparison, the other areas of the county are virtually stagnant almost. So let's drill in to that. Oh, see, circled it for you. Let's drill into that Bluffton number. So this is for tag 610 and 615. And for the benefit of those viewing, I am just going to pull up real fast where that is. So 600 and 610 essentially is almost everything other than this one little piece right here. It is almost everything south of the Broad River, not including Hilton Head. So it's going to be New Riverside, downtown Bluffton, Carlton River area, Kalawasi. So just to give everyone watching and all of you a visual of where this is. To see that this kind of growth is occurring is significant. This trajectory is large. And again, this is just real property. So where does real property, where do these additional accounts come from? They're going to come from two places, mainly parcel splits. So a builder, let's say a developer, for example, is going to come in. They have one giant parcel on the tax roll. So they are just one number in this 13,000 right here. But as they parcel off the different properties to grow and become a community, now it's not one parcel. In the many cases of many developments in Bluffton, it's in the hundreds, if not over 1,000. So over time, as they're developing their property, you're going to see this increase in the number of accounts. So again, the growth is happening. So let's look at new construction. And I just think this is the craziest slide to see because we know it's happening. Look at this. Remember I said tax year begins when we send the annual tax notices. This hasn't even been sent yet. And so it's only reflecting a portion of the year. This is what's already expected as of right now to be receiving a bill this upcoming October-November timeframe. Historically, I mean, obviously we had a growth opportunity, a huge growth in 2018, and we are in the next 2 years, year and a half, we will be having a reassessment. That's a cycle that's done every so often. But I just thought this was so indicative of the new, right? So maybe new construction means all new people. So we want to look at, look at new construction by tag, because you would think new construction, we just focus on Bluffton, I mean on this committee, but we're having new construction all over the county, and you can see that everywhere is experiencing a growth in new construction, not just Bluffton. But let's look just at Bluffton. This is just, like I said, we haven't sent out the 2021 tax bills yet. And so my expectation, so again, this is not fact, now we're getting into my surmising, is I would expect these to be a good deal higher when we do finally send those tax bills out in October, because we know there are going to be new properties coming on and being processed. So just to give you an idea of proportionally where the whole county is as far as new construction, and because new construction means if you assume that everyone previously living in Beaufort County has a place to live, whether it's purchased or renting, new construction is most likely new people, new families, new people coming here. So now let's talk about property transfers, because without new construction, you only have so much inventory. I don't know about all of you and those of our constituency watching, but me personally, I have gotten at least 3 notices in my mailbox from realtors. We're short on inventory. Would you like to sell your home? And so we know that our real estate market, not just for new construction, but existing homes, is very in demand right now. So let's look at that. We saw, this is calendar year, okay? Calendar year, an increase of almost 3,000 more transfers last year than the year before. And the way we categorize a transfer, because that is the Register of Deeds job to make, to handle the recording of those deeds, is we're going to look at any owner change in the tax data, which is what we have access to. So this is the quantity of changes that we saw in calendar year 2020. And yes, we were growing before, but I personally believe that our globe and our nation dealing with the coronavirus pandemic has prompted shifts in people and where they are choosing to live. I don't feel like there's a debate about that. When you look at just here, calendar year 15, this is a little under 400 more going from 15 to 16. And now we're talking about from here to here. I'm sorry, you don't see my cursor. From here to here, just under 3,000. And to know that calendar year 2021, we're not even finished with yet. So at this pace, we should be and might be just on par with calendar year 2020. So I think we were just getting ready to start the meeting when there was a reference to wishing to have a crystal ball. And I mean, this is as close as I can get for you guys to a crystal ball. We're growing and it's not stopping. So let's look at the tags. And if you can't tell, I'm really excited to be talking to you guys about this because I love the data. I think that the information that we have as a county and as government agencies, we can use to anticipate future needs and prepare for them now rather than wait and be reactionary and have people be upset. And we want to be the best we can be. And this is showing that this growth is not stopping. Here is what surprised me. We are growing everywhere. The property transfers are happening. When you look at the incline, they are growing in almost every area of the county. So don't forget my little, let me pull back up for everybody else. This map here showing these tags. Everywhere in the county is experiencing a significant increase in the number of transfers happening. Now that could be new people moving. It could be the significant increase in property values over the past 18 months and the markets and the hype of wanting to sell. But at the end of the day, it is growing. And what's interesting is 510. So let me just show you where 510 is. It is the northern end of Hilton Head. Is actually the transfers are equal in their trajectory to those happening in Bluffton. Everywhere else in the county, equal amounts of growth. The green is literally, this is the same line. I copied and pasted over and over so you could see it's consistent. And then that orange line. That's what surprised me really the most, because it tells me that there's not an interest in just new construction in Bluffton or more property parcels in Bluffton. It's telling me that there is an interest in our entire county, which is great. I love our entire county. Why shouldn't people love all parts of it? The interest is across the board, which I think for your team is again, getting back to a crystal ball, I think we will start seeing growth in these areas because all of these transfers that are occurring, what are they going to do? They're going to call their family and tell them what a great place they have here in Beaufort County. And why not move next to your family member or friend? So I really think, one, our residents are the greatest advertisers for Beaufort County. And I think this transfers and this growth is going to affect that real property graph that I showed you previously. It won't just be in Bluffton anymore. It's going to be in other areas too, in a growing amount. So now we're going to look just at Bluffton. And again, the calendar year is not over. If this trajectory continues at even just half, so not a double, because we are halfway through the year, but even if we assume that half of the current year's growth is what we have in the rest of the year, we will still have more than 2,200 transfers than we did the year before. Again, indicative, I think, of people and populations moving within the county. And I gotta believe that a lot of these property owners have children that will be in the school district. So I want to pause right there on real property because I'm about to transition into vehicles. Is there any questions or things we want to go back over for real property before I head into vehicles?
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is wonderful data, and this is mind-boggling to me.
I'm glad. I'm sorry it's mind-boggling, but hopefully in a
Yeah, no. I mean, I'm just. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you track? Could you tell us the difference in property values of the people paying the 4% rate and the people paying the 6% rate? Because
yep.
That's one of the issues that we have is that, because we get our funding for operations from
Absolutely
6% folks versus now we get, so it looks great for debt service, but I'm not so sure that it might be so great for our operation revenue.
Absolutely. So I have a few slides to address that because I knew you were gonna want to know that.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. It to be honest, it's never not been a concern because the growth that we have seen in Beaufort County, at least since I've joined the treasurer's office, has been the majority of that growth are legal residents, property owners.
Right.
So there's growth, but you're not seeing the growth of revenue that's equating to, that growth in property. So I have quite a few slides to cover that for you.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Awesome. Anything else before I get to vehicles?
I don't see any other hands raised, so let's go on.
Okay, perfect. So real property, like I said, is great. It's good to have that information, but those are rooftops, not people. So I don't want anyone watching to think that we track the people in Beaufort County. We track the tax accounts, and most adults have a vehicle. And that is where we're going to get some of our population ideas. This is the total amount of vehicles. Remember I said we'll start at countywide picture and then we'll drill down into the different tags and then we'll go to Bluffton. We're seeing an astronomical increase in vehicles. So this is by fiscal year. And fiscal year, we've seen over 19,000 more vehicles this fiscal year that just ended on June 30th, just a few weeks ago, than we did the year before. This jump between 19 and 20, that was just under 11,000 increase. And from here to here, we're at over 19,000. Our next highest jump is from 18 to 19, which was around 9,500. So we're not just growing, we are exponentially growing. Okay, a steady growth would be a few thousand a year and we move on. That's not what's happening. We're growing and we're growing faster than we were before. And again, if you want to take the standpoint of a vehicle is indicative of a person being in Beaufort County, we do have some second homeowners that have vehicles here, but predominantly there are people who are living and working in Beaufort County that have a vehicle bill. So now let's look at a tag. Again, very interesting with what we just showed about the property transfers. This growth isn't just happening in Bluffton. It is happening everywhere. Now, definitely a greater rate of increase for the Bluffton area, but even look at Hilton Head. And a lot of the growth historically has been focused in the Bluffton area. But that's not what we're seeing right now. You can, if you want to look back at just the few years, I mean, I've been in the treasurer's office since 2011, and this would have been, if I had shown you this back then, probably would have been very flat. And you can see that, everybody, every area is getting a swoop up. So we are growing, and we are growing quickly. Let's look at now, we're going to just focus in on Bluffton. So still, again, so this is again by fiscal year, so the year that just ended. So this is complete fiscal year 2021 information, but we're still seeing a total increase of 3,800 vehicles from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21. And the growth, again, is exponential growth. It's not just a consistent growth, a little, 1,000 every year. From 15 to 2016, we had about just at 1,000 in growth, but now we've grown by 3,800 vehicles. So 5 years ago, we're growing by 1,000 vehicles 1 year to the next, and now we're growing 3,800 vehicles from 1 year to the next. And what is also interesting is the biggest jump was actually between 2017 and 2018. That's when this big exponential growth started happening. And these years really are just following suit, which is, I just find that interesting, but it's still indicative that we're growing, and by how much. So now we're going to get into Colonel Geyer's big question, because all of this growth can be great from a revenue standpoint if they are the type of revenue you guys need. So this graph is going to show the quantity of accounts that are receiving the legal residence and homestead exemptions. Now, for the school district, legal residence is the primary. That's what you all care about the most. Typically, if I had shown you this graph right when the bills went out, this number would have been lower. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, as the assessor's office is processing these exemption applications, that number is going to climb and will result in a decrease of your expected revenue from that particular account. And sometimes, especially when it's at this point in the year, those accounts are typically paid already and is a refund. So it's coming back out of the revenues that we're distributing to the school district. So just a little operational information for you all there, because I know Ms. Crosby is very quick to ask, well, what happened here? Or because it's netted against the distributions that we're making to your team. So it is, again, just like anything else, it is growing. And what it's showing me is that there are more people moving here that want to make Beaufort County home than they did before. When I started in the treasurer's office, the split was 60-40, 60% non-legal residents and 40% legal residents. And then I'm going to show you a graph in a moment that shows that that's not the case anymore. So let's break it out by tag now. Let's look at the different areas of the county. And one of the subjects that the school district has been talking so much about over the past few years, obviously, is the growth in Bluffton. Do we have enough schools? Do we have enough capacity? And in some other areas of the county as well. You can see, I'm going to just pull it up right here. So let's find tag 200, which is this green right here. And then obviously we still have Bluffton down here. And there has been a good bit of growth out in Ladies Island and that area of northern Beaufort County. But from an application standpoint and volume, the biggest volume is, again, in Bluffton. I told you at the beginning, I'm not going to tell you anything that's going to surprise you or you probably couldn't have already guessed. But I really wanted today to give you the magnitude of those numbers of what they actually look like. And here again, in the northern part of Hilton Head, we still have some growth there as well in the amount of legal residence exemptions being obtained. And it's interesting, not just, the various responses to coronavirus throughout the country, but telecommuting. That is, instead of that being an exception, it has now very quickly become the norm. Well, there are some areas of the country, why would you want to live there and work there when you can live anywhere and work and be somewhere beautiful like Beaufort County? So we're seeing the growth, again, primarily in the number of legal residences in Bluffton, which just from, again, Maria's, my personal observation, this is the area where you can least afford to lose that tax revenue, because the number of legal residents increasing in Bluffton, where your greatest student population is, your greatest student need, is also the place where you're getting a growing number of less tax revenues. I'm sorry, I'm saying I think you know what I'm trying to say. The number of students are going up. The tax revenues from that area are, just based on the graph you're seeing right here, are declining. So let's look specifically at Bluffton. So these areas that you're seeing right here, again, are everything in this pinkish color and blue. Tax year 20 is not finished yet, which is why it's in red at the end, because these numbers are still going to change. Now, the assessor does have the opportunity to consider applications for prior tax years. That is not where we see our significant jump. We see our significant jump in the number of legal residences and homestead exemptions during the tax year. Again, it's prompted by the bills, and sometimes it takes a while to get that paperwork and the application process. So we're seeing an increase. Just even right here, I mean, we're already on par with last tax year. And again, this tax year is not finished. So I would say, from a volume standpoint, the bulk of those legal residence applications I would expect are have been applied for, because it typically does happen right after the tax bills go out. But I'm not expecting this number to go lower, is what I'm saying, as the year goes on.
Good.
So I referenced when I started. So this is the shift from a valuation standpoint. And the next few slides will specifically be about value. From 2011 to 2020, as you can see, 60% was non-legal residents. That's going to be our second homeowners, and it's going to be our commercial property. And then legal residents is going to be our single family units and people's dwellings where they're living. And now looking at 2020, that has shifted countywide significantly. We're looking at 45% legal residents and 55%. So now, but you're not going to be surprised to see that that is actually greater in Bluffton. And I know that with Ms. Wisniewski, the presentation she saw me do last, I did more pie charts, but I wanted you to see this a little bit differently. So I did the values by region. So the blue line is receiving the legal residence exemption. These are total values. And the orange line are the value of properties not receiving that exemption. And so this is the Hilton Head area, and by tax year. And you're going to see, okay, they're kind of consistent, right? They're parallel to each other. You do see, if you look closely, a little blip here, but they're moving up in tandem. My interpretation of that data is this is okay for the school district, because you're growing in both areas pretty much on pace. So hopefully the goal would be, from looking at just this graph, your tax revenue expectations are not changed. Everything's going up together. Okay, so now we'll look at northern Beaufort County, and this is everything north of the Broad River. All right, now we're seeing a little bit of a different picture. Values for non-legal residents and legal residents are increasing, but now we're seeing a little bit more faster increase in that legal residents. When they don't stay parallel is, again, a visual to the district of an indication that your value drives the bus on taxes, that tax base is changing, the allocation of that tax base is changing. And you can see very similar to the Hilton Head blip. I keep forgetting you cannot see my cursor. I'm so sorry. This Hilton Head blip right here is now more pronounced in northern Beaufort County and will continue to grow. And something I should have mentioned a couple slides ago, if you do not transfer your property, the only time your value pretty much will change from the assessor's office is during a reassessment. We have not had a reassessment, so any changes in value are due to a property transfer. And so if you've lived in your home since 2017, your value is the same on here. So the next reassessment is going to be so important to the district because of that, because then everything is reassessed and revalued, not just the properties that have changed hands. So, okay, you can see the gap right here is narrowing than what it was. So now let's look at Bluffton. It is significantly changed. This is a visual explosion of property value because now the lines aren't just non-legal residence is more valuable. Let's say total value is more than legal residence. It has swapped. It has shifted. And now there are the value from a valuation standpoint, there is more value in the properties obtaining the non-legal residence exemption than there are in the properties receiving the exemption. And I have to say this is the other slide that surprised me as well. You drive around, and I live in Bluffton. You drive around and you see these developments, you see cars in the driveway full time. So there's indications, but when you see the data, I mean, it can tell a story when you are looking at it in a way that writes it, in what's happening. So now that I've laid that all on you, I am ready for your questions.
Thank you so much for that. That's really telling. And I recall seeing the pie charts on the previous presentation, and then just seeing the pie charts back then startled me. Seeing that shift in the residents. Yes. That startled me because I know from an operations standpoint and our debt service that has a huge impact to the district. So,
and as we were, because I normally do a pie chart when I do a presentation, but as I was talking with my team about this data, because we've been working on it for quite a few weeks, and I thought, oh my gosh, we have to see, you appreciate it so much more when you're looking at it like this, because you see it.
Yeah, you can't hide data. It's there. This is the truth of what we're dealing with right now. We just have to try to use it to plan.
Correct.
Colonel Geyer, did you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the interesting slides you showed was the car registrations. And I thought it was most interesting to look at the Hilton Head area, because normally second homeowners don't register cars.
Yes.
They have a car in Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
and they come down and they rent it out and everything else. But when I see that kind of tells me that a lot of those second homeowners are either moving here and becoming permanent residents here, or they're selling their second home to somebody who's transferred in and staying here and not using it as a second home.
Yes.
That tells me generally with vehicles come kids.
Yes.
So
Now, the one, because we do have, you know, especially with what has been happening over the past 18 months, there's, I mean, another thing that's gone up in value is used cars.
yes,
Used car values have increased. So a new account would be created for a transfer if I sold you my car. So I'm sorry if I forgot to mention that when I was going over this slide, but yes, to your point, a body has to drive that vehicle, which means they're here.
Do you have a data or chart showing commercial property growth? I mean, those are 6% payers too that I'm interested in. And do you have that broken out?
I do not, but I could get that for you within the week and even put it on in the context of these graphs so you can see it together, not just because I have a lot of spreadsheets behind these graphs that I will include in the packet I send you all afterwards.
The reason I mention that is I would love to get a copy of this because the finance committee needs to see this as well because of the strategic financial planning that we do.
Yeah.
You know, we had a demographer come here 2 years ago, world-class demographer, and this blows it out of the water. You know?
Well, I mean, it's almost like this things pre-COVID
Yes.
don't really count anymore. I mean, it's like a whole new ball game, and because people change, we adapt. We're a very adaptable species, and we will adapt to our environment in a manner that we individually deem is better for our life. So, yeah, you can do all the projections you want, but unless you were predicting a pandemic, I don't know if it's useful anymore.
This is so valuable, but it's also very worrying because how are we going to cope with this as we start to see the kids come up and show up at our classrooms?
Yeah, and you know, elements here that are not going to be you know, because I just wouldn't know them. But again, we all have family members throughout the country. I have a family member who's moving and their child will stay virtual in their district. And so that might be a thing too. I mean, again, people's ingenuity on how to take care of their families is really interesting to see. But
And I know there was a question earlier on before we got started about our enrollment numbers and things like that. And I know that registration was just recently opened up. They sent out the digital links to all the parents. And typically we have a better idea of those numbers 45 days after the first day of school. So that's definitely going to be something that's going to go into this conversation as school starts in August this year. I don't know if Ms. Crutchfield, you have any other comments on that, but I was working to register my own children recently. So
exactly. Yes, I mean, it will, you know, we can always start looking, but until 45 day, that's when things kind of settle down. But from one data geek to another, I really have enjoyed all your charts and graphs and everything. And it, you know, when I see other people's data, it always gets me thinking about other ways to look at the data that we have. Mm-hmm. So one thing I don't think I've ever done is just look at growth in students by the tag, you know, by that tax area. Some of them obviously equate to municipalities, and I have looked at it that way. But, you know, it's something I might want to look at because you're seeing growth in areas like Ladies Island as well. 112, that's, you know, Paris Island. That surprises me, and I noticed because I was wanting to know where it was. So that surprises me. I wanted to take a look at that. And certainly, you know, parts of Hilton Head it comes and goes over the years. I've been looking at
does.
Beaufort County data for a long time, but now, it's on the increase again. So I really want to overlay our student growth data historically, go back and kind of match the years that you did
Yeah.
to look at what it looks like with student growth and your tax numbers, your vehicle numbers. That will be very interesting to see, and I'll be happy to share that with you when I do.
Oh, I would
that.
love to see it. And I do want to say a very special thank you to the county GIS department because they provided this wonderful graph.
They're amazing. I love those guys. Yes,
They
and
are.
girls. Yes.
And what, as you're speaking, I'm thinking, well, something we've used their support before. If you had addresses for those students, they can actually plot them based on the tags that you see
I do
right
that.
here. Oh, okay.
I do that. Yes. So I can plot them right on that. All I'd have to do is get that tag layer from them, and they're amazing. They share their data with me. We work closely together. It's awesome. The other thing that the last graph you had where the lines cross, what popped into my mind looking at that is this shows the need for the impact fees that the county just passed. I mean, here's a graph that tells this is why we need the impact fees. And this is why we need all the municipalities to also sign on to that agreement, because this is going to be the way. We're not going to get that value from the 6% for operations. We're going to need that money.
And I think it's important, to note in the context of the conversation that the district and the county doesn't control the legal residence exemption and how that's allocated. Right. I mean, because that's really, it's a state law. Right. And in fairness to our 6% property owners, whether they're second homeowners or commercial property owners, I mean, there's only so much tax burden that a tax base can bear. And I'm very grateful that I don't have to decide what that is. I'm just collecting the tax dollars that I'm told to collect. But this does show graphically that there is an increasing burden, an exponentially growing increasing burden on one portion of the tax base over another.
What it's also going to show is, this year we are projecting keeping the millage rate for our debt service being the same. And that's probably a good idea. And that we have an increase in tax millage for the 6% folks, and this shows that why you need an additional millage, because the value of the mill, this
value drives the bus on taxes.
Exactly.
Miss Boatwright, I see your hand is raised.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, thank you all, and thank you, Ms. Wells. My question is the change that they're having now to the business licensing. Kind of a big issue here on Hilton Head, because if you even rent out a room in your house now, I think it's if you make over $2,000 a year, you have to get a business license for that. Will that have any impact on the 4% and 6% levels? So if someone was an owner occupied who rented their house out maybe 4 or 5 weeks a year and had to get a business license, will they now be taxed at 6%?
That would really be an assessor's office question, but their eligibility for the legal residence exemption does allow them to rent their property, but only up to a certain number of days. So I not knowing the exact answer to that, I would say an educated guess would be that it's possible they may need a business license and still be eligible for the legal residence exemption. Just depends on how many number of days that I've not asked Miss Ebony that question, but I certainly am now. So
I'm just curious how that's an issue here on Hilton Head. There is definitely in my neighborhood as of yesterday. I live in 550. There are 0 homes for sale, and most of them are actually people with kids. A lot of them are people with kids, or younger active retirees that are relocating from Atlanta and Cincinnati and all the, just like you said. And then a lot of it too, like in Sea Pines, it's an investment, and people are buying cash sight unseen and renting them out. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects our tax collections for the school district.
I mean, even just observing over the winter months, we typically have a tourist season, and it was challenging to find a weekend place on the island to rent. And even if you did, the people around you, well, I'm here for 3 weeks, I'm here for 2 months. Why be where they are if they can work here? So, and I told someone recently, if you're here for a month, there's no way you're going back to where you came from. And if you do, it's only to go back and sell everything and get here as fast as you can.
Sure. Very true. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if we touched on it before, but for those people, especially those that might be watching and are new to our area and new to how South Carolina funds school districts, I think it's important for them to understand why we're talking about this difference in legal residents versus those that are non-legal residents. And it's because the tax basis or the tax percentage that they are taxed at, certain ones and certain individuals, it goes into our operations, and then the others go into our debt service. And so understanding the difference there, because I know in other states, everybody thinks that they pay into the school district just by being a legal resident, and that's not necessarily the case in South Carolina. So when things like this happen in Bluffton in particular, and we have a boom in students and we need capacity to serve those students, it creates a bit of a conundrum for us. So I'm really glad that you were able to come here to speak to us, Ms. Walls. I think that this information is, like Colonel Geyer touched on, going to be really important for the Finance Committee, who Colonel Geyer and I both serve on that as well. And I think this is going to trickle into our discussions over there. I wanted to see if any other of our viewers, let's see, I think we have Robert Otting, if he had any questions, or anybody else had any questions before we wrap things up here.
And Ingrid has her hand up again, just to let you know.
Okay.
No, Miss Ingrid forgot to put it down. Sorry.
Okay.
Awesome.
There's no other questions. I did want you to know that if you would like any of these graphs updated periodically, I would be happy to do that for you. You just let me know what you want to see, and I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that we're going to have to keep an eye on it for a while.
Yeah.
Maria, if you could send those your charts to Robin at Cushenberry.
Absolutely.
I want to put that on the agenda of the next Finance Committee meeting to show that to the Finance Committee.
And I would say if you update them perhaps end of October, that would be end of tax year.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of coincides with 45-day enrollment time frame-ish, So then we could have, similar sets of similar data at the same time frame, looking back and looking forward. Yeah.
Absolutely. I would be able to have October 31st numbers about midway through November. And and then we would also have the benefit of actually having the 2021 tax bills completed, so we'd get a full picture of what was actually going out. So I'd be happy to do that.
That would be perfect timing. Yes.
That would be great. Yeah, that's going to give us a little bit of a clearer picture, and adding in those additional data points from you, Carol, will be illuminating,
Amazing.
I'm sure.
Yes. And I think for not just for the Bluffton area, but we've got a new committee going to look at Northern Beaufort County.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly since we're seeing some changes there, this would be great information for them to start their work with. So.
That's right. Wonderful. Well, I want to be respectful of your time, Treasurer Walls, and the last thing we have on our agenda is discussing future topics. So I think we have a lot here to consider. But I wanted to thank you again for coming and speaking with us, and I really appreciate you taking the time to gather all this, and your team as well, because I know you have a great team behind you that's assisting you. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. And I'm here if there's anything else that you ever want to see, especially in November. If I'm going to come back, please just tell me now, and we'll get it together and make it available to all of you.
Great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
So moving on to our next agenda item is discussion of future agenda topics. I think we have a lot to consider here. I know, Carol, you just mentioned about the tags and putting, kind of marrying up Treasurer Walls' information along with the tags and what you see with student population and things like that. So I don't know if that's necessarily something we can get by next month. I know you're super busy, but if so, I think that would be interesting to see, to kind of try to begin that conversation too.
It should be something that would, I mean, the data is already there. It's just adding one layer to the map and then, you know, grabbing it and throwing in a chart. So that's something we could probably do for next time. Be interesting to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to see if there's a correlation there with those growth numbers and, you know, just to validate it some more, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Colonel Geyer?
Yes, I'd like to add on the future agenda topics to talk about real estate search in the Bluffton area.
What was that? Sorry, I missed
I hear you.
Real estate search. I mean, you know, we asked to have the, you know, someone to come in and.
Oh, the consultant.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And to see, we're going to have to buy
The
some
land consultant.
Yeah. We're going to have to buy some land, and we need to start thinking about where, you know, how we're going to pay for it, that kind of thing.
I think there also was a request from another board member to discuss that. So I don't know if it would come to the full board first or come to us, but either way, we certainly will bring it back up.
Yeah.
I know it's on the agenda, I believe, for the full board.
Okay.
I think something about location is something that, you know, they're going to talk about how much and where, but
Right.
where are we going to put these things? Where are we going to find the property? Where are we going to put them? How, you know, how are we going to pay for it? How long it's going to take? How are we going to, you know, are we going to, you know, we don't have room for mobiles.
Right.
So this is this really, I'll lose some sleep over this one because this is serious.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this, the one that I was going to suggest as well, I'm not sure if it belongs necessarily on the Ad Hoc Bluffton Growth Committee's agenda or on the Finance Committee's agenda, but just in looking at the data that Treasurer Walls presented and seeing that the quantity of the bills that are going out, and particularly those that might be going towards debt service, I don't know if our debt service is going to be paid down faster or impacted, and that could in turn lead to something on the Ad Hoc Bluffton Growth Committee's agenda in the future. So not sure if it belongs there yet, but might want to have finance look at first.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Robert, do you have anything?
I was just going to state, you know, the kind of interesting thing here, and it's kind of what you're asking for by overlaying their data, is trying to get a relationship between student growth and the other growth in the county, because they may or may not be directly related. We've never tracked or correlated them, so we don't know what the factors are and how those are related. Because obviously, if you're not getting growth with people with kids, and how to figure that out is what they just, I don't know that answer. It's something I know Carol and I can talk about. And I was kind of wondering why you wanted to overlay their tag growth now before we have our new student growth. And we can obviously do that as part of our book for this upcoming year. But we can start to think about how they're related. Does that make any sense? That's kind of my question, because I don't know that answer.
Yeah, definitely start looking at it and see if there's a correlation or not. If there's not, then sooner we know it, the better. If there is, then and the deeper we can dive into it as our numbers develop this coming school year, then the better too, in my personal opinion.
Well, I mean, and I guess we know there's going to be a correlation. It just may be different for the different zones, and it may not be as direct as we're seeing in the different zones. So that's you know, that's the interesting part to me, or that's a big question mark.
Yeah. Well, I leave that to you and Carol to discuss further and bring to us for us to ask questions and figure it out. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for your time today. I appreciate it. Lots of stuff to consider. And again, thank you to Treasurer Walls. And I don't see any other questions. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Our next, before you adjourn, our next meeting is scheduled for August the 26th at 5 o'clock. Is that good?
Let me double check. Thank you for bringing that up. August.
It's good for me.
That's good for me.
Okay.
Good for you, Carol and Robert. Good.
Haven't had, one of us will be here. There.
Okay. Great. Thank y'all so much. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I second, and seeing no objection. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good